Reflection on number 18, the how am I doing? That's the thing. Her code, truth and fear wrapped in love with the willingness to not know, to be wrong, to be human, is not something she wrote and taped to a wall. It's something she grew out of her bones as she walked through fire. The frame. On 888 the Lion's Gate, a date pulsing with strength, return, and infinite loops, the writer receives a question that lands like an insult to reality, and she experiences it as almost absurd in its detachment. How are you doing? She feels her unworthiness even in the absence of the question mark. The letter is her answer, but also her refusal to collude with minimization. A question that flattens 42 days of silence into something causal, as though anguish could be wrapped into a neat reply. She reconstructs the timeline, she names the chronology, 42 days of silence after the parking lot sighting. She shows the evidence, the massive delay text and the delivery receipt. And then she walks the reader into the body that has been carrying the weight of it. This is not a plea. This is a sworn testimony, emotional, ethical, and cosmic. What this letter is, it's a record of moral injury, not just heartbreak, but the kind of fracture that happens when someone who once stood in your inner circle with both hands on your life chooses absence, and then reduces the absence to two words: massive delay. Not just the rupture of love, but the ache of being minimized, reduced to collateral damage in someone else's story. It shows how silence can feel louder than words, how euphemism can wound more than absence. It's a study in self-regulation under siege. The part of her that wants to retaliate is alive and kicking, but my awareness locked her in this bubble. Rage is allowed to exist, but not to spill. Heartbreak is given voice, but not the steering wheel. Containment becomes an act of love, not for him, but for herself. It's a boundary you can hear. I'm not playing this game anymore. The door is still open for truth, even for fear if it's named, but not for performance. The hinges are closed to pretense. Love still flows, but access now travels through a narrow, intentional gate. The style and why it works. The cadence alternates between heartbreak and hammer. Anaphora, the everyday, every single day litany is a drumbeat of endurance, reclaiming a timeline stolen by silence. Direct address. She writes to him, not just about him. The accountability stays alive. Switching pronouns. I for the witness, she for the activated part. This creates enough space to see the whole picture without abandoning any part of herself. This creates distance without disowning anything. Parenthetical side notes like not true. Act as a little emergency flares, breaking up spirals with quick, blunt truth. Motives. And the motives carry weight. The game, collateral damage, the bubble, the open door. They become shorthand for entire emotional landscapes. It's not just what she says, it's the way she paces it. Letting the reader feel the rage, then the stillness, then the ache. And none of it is consciously constructed. It flows out unplanned, yet somehow arranges itself in a rhythm that carries the truth more clearly than design ever could. Lines that stay in the body. My awareness locked her in this bubble. A snapshot of part work mastery. It's self-parenting in a single sentence. I'm not playing this game anymore. The door is open for truth, for fear, yes, not for pretending. Love with terms, stated in the cleanest language possible. I am your collateral damage and it fucking sucks. a line that refuses euphemism. I am waking up and it hurts like hell. An awakening strip of all spiritual prettiness, pain acknowledged as part of the process. Silence seemed like heaven until the text. The paradox, absence kinder than half-hearted return. Every day, every single day, a metronome of devotion and endurance written into the bones. These lines don't just tell the story, they are the story. They carry both the rupture and the refusal to abandon love. On him, the text dissected. The message. Sorry about the massive delay in response. I think it was me. I did not see you guys. I pieced it together after your text and what the person I was with told me. How are you doing? Language as self-protection. Massive delay reduces 42 days of silence to something that sounds like customer service inconvenience. The phrase shrinks the lived reality into an impersonal inconvenience, flattening weeks of anguish into something that could be brushed off with a shrug. I think it was me. Hedges as if responsibility can be blurred. The person I was with removes identity, removes intimacy, reduces a human to a placeholder. I did not see you guys. Contradicts her memory of a smile, recentering the conversation on perception rather than impact. And then the pivot. How are you doing? Sent separately after the first block had already gone out. He hit send, paused, type again, and sent again. On the surface, it could be read as a small check-in, maybe even guilt or sense of duty. But in the field, it lands differently, not as care, but as carelessness. After 6 weeks of silence, the question feels hollow, even offensive, as if the magnitude of her anguish could be reduced to a box he could tick. Energetic signature. The whole structure avoids staying in one hot place too long. It moves quickly from acknowledgement, watered down, to distancing, vagueness, to re-engagement on his terms, her labor, his equilibrium. It is not overt cruelty. It's self-regulation at someone else's expense. The impact is real. The silence leaves a meaning vacuum, a blank space where words, context, or acknowledgement should have been. And because humans can leave that blank alone, especially in intimacy, the one on the receiving end has to fill it, usually with the heaviest, most painful interpretations. The omission toward Amel cuts doubly deep. Without a single word to mark the departure, the child is left to metabolize absence without the adult frame that could have softened it. One simple line, I need to step back, it isn't your fault, might have provided an anchor. The absence of that sentence leaves an inviting option for the wound to be internalized. And the integrity for preventing that lies with him, not with the child. He may have been trying in some way to extend a small thread toward reconnection, whether out of guilt or sense of duty, an impulse to check a box, or even a flicker of genuine care. But because it came without repair, without naming or tending to the wound, the gesture could not land as care. Instead, it read as careless, almost offensive in its simplicity. After 6 weeks of silence, how are you doing felt less like presence and more like a hollow echo, a line that shifted the labor back onto her shoulders to explain, soothe, or narrate. Whatever his motive, the impact remained the same. The door cracked open without the foundation rebuilt. None of this proves malice. It does show a way of coping, protecting his own equilibrium, keeping himself regulated, while leaving others to metabolize the fallout. A strategy of capacity management. Nervous system progression. Earlier letters were written from inside the storm, tossed around by waves she could barely name. This one is written while riding the storm, not outside of it, but with enough steadiness to steer. She names freeze instead of being swallowed by it, lets the rage voice itself without letting it burn everything down, contains the fire instead of collapsing under it, and refuses retaliation even when it would have been the easiest release. That is the definition of integration, feeling everything fully and still choosing from the adult. The self who can witness, honor, and direct the energy rather than be ruled by it. Rider progression. Here, the shift is not only nervous system deep, but authorial. She didn't win in the way the ego once demanded, but something was felt. Not him, not the love, but the pattern that kept her trapped in reacting on his terms. This wasn't a strategy she sat down and designed. It arose because she released resistance, followed the small urges, and landed, almost without not noticing, in a posture that was profoundly self-honoring. The paradox stands. She's still fully in love, still heartbroken, still in disbelief, and yet no longer available for the game. The signature of the writing itself is different from earlier letters, and future her will look back on this one as a quiet but defining victory. The images place. The perfect placement for the screenshot and delivery receipt would be right before the "how do you think I'm doing" line. Yet, even where they sit now, at the very top, the reader is forced to see the understatement in black and white before feeling her reply. Documentation, not decoration. And crucially, it isn't a breach of privacy. It's the record of what entered and landed in her world, the raw material she was given, even forced to metabolize. This isn't about exposing him. It's about exposing what silence, delay, and understatement do in her field. The 888 code. 8 is loop and closure both. On Lionsgate, she refused the loop, the old economy of her emotional labor traded for his equilibrium. This letter marks the end of that pattern. Strength here is not armored shutdown. It is soft front, strong back. The heart remains open, the door remains narrow. ML, the unspoken center. Even in solitude, she is not alone. ML is part of this field, and the absence of acknowledgement toward him becomes its own indictment. Naming it here is not attack but stewardship, a record that she protected him even when no one else did. Bottom line. This letter begins with a question that should have been simple, but instead it felt absurd. How are you doing? A question that collapses silence, erasure, and anguish into something small, as if the answer could ever be causal. And so she answers, not with a polite gesture, but with testimony, with the truth of what her body endured, what her love carried, and what her awareness held. There is rage in these words, yes, but not the kind that spills outward. It is rage locked inside the bubble of her own awareness, held close so it doesn't destroy, so it cannot be turned against her. She lets the ego scream, lets the part demand retaliation, and then she says no. She watches instead. She holds. She parents herself through it. That is the quiet miracle of this piece. The evidence of heartbreak is all here, but the nervous system signature is different. She is steering. She is naming. Collateral damage, massive delay, the game. The phrases are sharp enough to cut through the fog of minimization. What was reduced to blandness in his words is expanded to its true size here, so no one, not even her future self, can forget what actually happened. Silence is not neutral. its assigned meaning by default. And yet, love. The letter is soaked in it. Not bargaining, not pleading, not trying to wrestle him back into place. Just love that refuses to die, love that continues to hum beneath the pain. The paradox is stark. She's still fully in love, still heartbroken, still in disbelief, and at the same time no longer available for the game. That combination has never appeared in her writing before. And what remains? The same code she lives by now, truth and fear wrapped in love. The willingness to not know, to be wrong, to be human. She may not have chosen this consciously. It seems instead that she simply stopped resisting, let the urges move her, and found herself in a stance that honors her. She did not construct it, she arrived there by surrender. It is heartbreaking still. She is still in love, she's still in disbelief, the reality she occupies. And yet she is also changed in a way that cannot be undone. The love that once risked being used against her has become a force she stewards. It flows freely, but the door is narrowed. Only truth passes. Only fear, named aloud, is welcome. Everything else, the justification, the pretense, has lost access. Bottom line. This letter makes one thing unmistakable. She loves without letting love be used against her. Her love is still here, daily, constant, humming beneath the pain. It hurts, but it no longer functions as a leash. She has stripped out the hooks. She has separated essence from access. Truth still passes through. Fear still passes through. Everything else is turned away. This is not a love that can be diminished by neglect or controlled by silence. It is cosmic, archetypal, fierce. It moves galaxies, but it will not move her into self-betrayal again. If number 15 was shattering and number 16 the fire, then number 18 is the architecture that rises after a heart still infinite but no longer bleeding out. A door still open but guarded by sovereignty. A love that is cosmic, painful, undeniable, and now too vast, too true to ever again be turned against her.